การพัฒนากำลังคนเพื่อยกระดับสมรรถนะตามนโยบายการปฏิรูปอุดมศึกษาไทยเรื่องการปฏิรูปอุดมศึกษาไทยแบบพลิกโฉมร่วมสร้างวัฒนธรรมการเปลี่ยนแปลงซึ่งงานนี้จัดขึ้นโดยมีวัตถุประสงค์เพื่อสร้างความรู้ความเข้าใจเกี่ยวกับแนวทางการผลิตบัณฑิตและการพัฒนากำลังคนเพื่อยกระดับสมรรถนะความเชี่ยวชาญให้ตรงกับความต้องการของภาคอุตสาหกรรมมีสมรรถนะในโลกสมัยใหม่ทางด้านวิชาชีพมีศักยภาพสูงสอดคล้องกับโลกปัจจุบันที่เปลี่ยนแปลงไปอย่างรวดเร็วและเพื่อสร้างการตระหนักรู้ของการปฏิรูปอุดมศึกษาในมิติต่างๆทางด้านการจัดการเรียนการสอนการปรับภูมิทัศน์สถานศึกษาการพัฒนาสมรรถนะอาจารย์ซึ่งเป็นพลังสำคัญในการร่วมขับเคลื่อนการเปลี่ยนแปลงรวมทั้งเป็นเวทีแสดงผลงานนวัตกรรมและแลกเปลี่ยนการเรียนรู้การจัดการเรียนการสอนที่ส่งเสริมให้อาจารย์และนักศึกษาของสถาบันอุดมศึกษาได้ร่วมทำงานกับภาคอุตสาหกรรมตามแนวทางโครงการสร้างบัณฑิตพันธุ์ใหม่และกำลังคนเพื่อตอบโจทย์ภาคการผลิตตามนโยบายการปฏิรูปอุดมศึกษาไทยค่ะสำหรับกิจกรรมแรกนะคะจะเป็นการปาฐกถาพิเศษโดย Managing Director Minerva Project ในหัวข้อ Building the Future Change in 21st Century Higher Education Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the High Office of Higher Education Commission, it's our great honor to present our guest speaker, Managing Director of Minerva Project, which is the reinvented university experience for the world's most motivated students. He got his Bachelor of Arts from Middlebury College and Master of Business Administration from Harvard Business School. Originally from the United States, he has lived in Asia for more than 20 years, where he is well known for his knowledge of higher education issues, education innovation, and China-America cross-border education. And today, he is presenting a valuable topic about building the future, change in 21st century higher education. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kenn Ross, Managing Director of Minerva Project.
Sawadee krap. That is the extent of my Thai, unfortunately. Thank you. So I'd like to thank OHEC and the ministry and Professor Bundit, wherever he is, for the invitation. And again, today we're going to talk a bit about change. But we're not just going to talk about change. I'm going to show you what some people are actually doing to be that change. Right? Talk about building a change culture. Talk about how can we be the change we want to see in the world, or at least in education, in higher education. And we're going to talk a bit about that. Right? So today, if you look at the few things I'll cover, I'll talk about how it's probably past time for a change in higher education. I'll cover what some of us believe, and I believe many of you will agree, is a better way to learn. We'll talk about how this system can be beneficial not just for learners and for students, which we believe should come first, but also for the institutions that educate them. And we'll talk about how this system has achieved some unprecedented learning outcomes as it's been used particularly in Minerva schools, right? And then I'll give a little bit of at the very end about how many here in Thailand and everywhere can be that change, can maybe either follow in our footsteps or build upon what we've actually started to get to someplace even better. Right? Oh, okay, that's a little cut off, but this isn't, right? But first, a quote from our friend Mr. Charles Darwin, right? It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one most adaptable to change. Interesting to put in this context, because really it's past time for change in higher education, right? It's interesting to note how the world of, how society in the world of work, post-education, has changed so much. You know, they estimate that we're going to lose in the next couple of years maybe 75 million jobs. But at the same time, there will be even more than that, 130 some million jobs that will be created. Sounds like change to me. A bunch of things going away. A lot of people always focus on what's going away. But we have to remember that there's things that will be created, there'll be new things coming down the road. And we have to be able to be prepared for that change. It's interesting to note the continued relentless drive of globalization and what that actually means for both education and what we actually do after our experiences in education. And finally, it's important to remember that really we as educators need to equip students with the adaptable skills, the transferable skills, those skills that will, I'm not exactly who coined this phrase, but the term future-proof, that will able to allow students to future-proof themselves, that will enable institutions to future-proof those students. And by future-proof, I mean like waterproof. You know, if something's waterproof, it doesn't get wet. It doesn't have to fear water. If we can future-proof ourselves, we don't have to fear the change because we can adapt to it. And we have those skills and abilities to adapt to it. So we know, I mean, this is not, news to anybody, what I'm talking about here. We know how the world is changing. We definitely know it is changing, let's put it that way, and fast. But at the same time, we also know that higher education institutions have been very resistant to that change, often for very systemic reasons. Sometimes you can't always blame institutions for that. Sometimes it's just there's systemic issues that exist, right? And I think we're all sort of aware of a lot of these systemic issues. One is that there is a huge gap between what students now, learners need to learn, again, to be successful, regardless of what they do in life, whether they work for the government, whether you work in business, whether you work in research, in academia. There's a big gap between what they need and what universities actually provide. And if you look at feedback from employers, that gap is just, it's a very, very wide chasm, right? At the same time, in many places, certainly where I'm from, originally in the United States, a lot of people don't even complete their degrees. Right? Still a major problem. I know maybe a little bit less of a problem in Thailand, but it's still an issue. And then also, we cannot forget the seriously, I'd say, the high cost of higher education. Now, of course, if you look in the United States context, most of this cost, or a lot of this cost, is borne by students in the form of very high tuition. Now you may say, oh, in Thailand tuition is not that high, in the UK tuition is not that high, right? But there's cost, and somebody pays for it. It might be the government, it might be the institution, right? But costs, in many ways, when people say, have spiraled actually out of control. Okay, so in order to address these issues and other issues that exist, right, we really need to rethink about what and how and where we teach, and what and how and where students actually learn. And so that's exactly what some people did, right? Here I'm talking not only about what we should do, but let's talk about what actually is happening. So a group of individuals, not too many years ago, less than 10 years ago, came together and did just that. Started with a blank sheet of paper, started from nothing, and said, we are going to rethink everything there is about higher education, everything there is about a higher education institution, about a higher education system. And the result of that rethink, which is still ongoing because it's a continuous iteration, it's a continuous process, right, is Minerva. 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 How many people here have heard of Minerva Schools or Minerva Project or Minerva? How many people have heard? Raise your hands. Raise them high. A few. Not too many. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I haven't been to Thailand that much in the past, so maybe this has something to do with it. I don't know. Right? So, but what has been created, what this group of individuals, some very prominent educators, from the United States and elsewhere have come together to create a system, right, called the Minerva System, right? And the system involves curriculum, scaffolded university curriculum. It includes the best of all the pedagogical practices that we as educators know are effective, while doing away with all those pedagogical practices that are not effective, right? And also it includes technology to augment both of these, right? Not technology for technology's sake, but technology to optimize learning outcomes as best as we can, right? Okay, right? So the Minerva System, right? What we would argue would be a better way to learn, right? And let's talk a little bit about what and how and sort of where, using this system, where students actually learn. Like, let's not forget, right, that regardless of what a student, a university student, a college-level student, regardless of what major they're going to have, whether they study computational sciences or whether they study natural sciences of some sort, or whether they study business, right, as I did, what's most critical is the ability to readily apply these transferable skills. We talk about this all the time, right? Particularly where I'm from in the US, universities love to talk about critical thinking and creative problem solving and effective communication, right? Even though most of them don't actually purposefully teach that. They sometimes hope we get it naturally, right? But these are the core capacities we all know are critical regardless of what we do. Many of us are educators here. Some of us also work in the government, right? But regardless of who you talk to out on the streets in this country and other parts of the world, right? Regardless of what you do, right? These are the core keys and abilities that we actually need. And this is what universities should purposefully and in a structured way teach, to students. But how do you do that? That's the thing. Okay, let's remember, for those of us who, if you know a little bit about the science of learning, cognitive science, you know that something like critical thinking is not just one thing, which is why I almost don't like to use the term critical thinking. We at Minerva to break down the component parts of what people commonly call critical thinking and creative thinking and problem solving and effective communication and effective interaction. We've broken those down into their core component parts, right? Something we call habits of mind and foundational concepts, whatever you want to call it, the core key building blocks, the cognitive processes of how to think. What any university should, we believe, above all else, be teaching, right? Structuring those, right? And then actually allowing students, forcing students to practice far transfer. Transfer, the holy grail of education, right? Not just learning something in one context, that this is very passive. I'm sitting here talking, and you're sitting there receiving. Not the best way to learn. We all know that, right? But yet, we also know traditional education, higher education, there's a lot of that type of passive learning. Oh, here we go. But what if everything becomes active? What if you take all of the tools that have been proven over decades of research and application? What if you take all of these active learning tools and you use them every single day in every single class? The classroom would look very different than what it would look, than what many of us are used to as students and even as teachers. It would be active, not passive. It would be intimate and not intimate, right? Let me show you what fully active learning looks like in practice. Let me show you this change in practice. If we could have a video, please.
The Active Learning Forum is the unexpected learning forum, the place where you're constantly engaging with what you're learning.
As a Minerva student, I get to take classes from anywhere in the city.
All of Minerva's classes are taught in the seminar format with a maximum of 18 students.
Everyone agrees that higher education could be much better than it is today. Minerva is acting on that by putting together state-of-the-art technology and superb pedagogy. We have at our fingertips tools that are designed to engage the students 100% of the time.
When you characterize a problem, it's important that it helps guide you to the solution.
Perfect, that's excellent.
In a normal classroom, there's people behind you, there's people to the side of you, but it's nice to be able to see everybody and their reactions to what's being talked about in class.
I feel like I'm in a room with all of my students. I simply forget I'm on the computer. You will be going into breakout groups?
It's the kind of learning where we're an active participant instead of a passive recipient, and it's so much more fun than a traditional class.
We are the only school in the world that uses the science of learning to design not just what we teach, but how we teach it.
Minerva students live and study together. Having that human interaction really strengthens the online class experience.
We can do things with education that has simply never been possible before, and that's what we're trying to do at Minerva.
So we can do things with education that have not been possible before. We can make things so incredibly active, right? We can pull together all of what we know about how the brain works and how the brain learns, right? We can use technology to even augment that further and do stuff that you cannot do in a traditional classroom. These are many of the things we're actually doing. So I talked a little bit about how this system can be beneficial for students, right? Talk a little bit from a institutional perspective, how it could be beneficial for institutions, right? Number of ways is that even though technology is not the end game here, it is interesting because it does allow to create and manage a much more controlled and dynamic setting that you could do than you could do in a traditional classroom. Even some of the tools, pedagogical methods and tools we can use in a traditional classroom, be them breakout groups or collective work, a group work together, become, as you may have seen a little bit from just the video now, become much more effective and much more efficient on what we call Minerva Forum. That's one aspect. Also, the system allows any instructor from any institution, technically, teaching anything, right, regardless of what the content and the subject matter is, right, to develop very structured, right, scaffolded lesson plans very efficiently and very easily, right? And it also allows something interesting when you think about it. If every single student's performance in every single class is recorded, right, it allows the ability to give unprecedented feedback, individualized feedback about student performance. Something, again, you really can't do in a traditional classroom, right? Another aspect of this is that the system could allow an institution, any institution, really to much more easily develop, I'd say, quite cost-effective programs of various sorts, be them graduate programs, undergraduate programs, right, that are very, very differentiated, right? Just exactly what Minerva Schools has actually done, right? And let's not forget one thing, talk about cost. Because those of you who have run universities in the past know a big chunk of the traditional university with beautiful campuses and very, very nice buildings and amenities in the United States the past several decades, there's been a race for universities to develop the nicer buildings and the prettier student centers and the nice swimming centers. A lot of stuff that doesn't have much to do with education, right? But fixed asset infrastructure, buildings and campus infrastructure, right, account for a lot of the cost of a university. What if you could rethink how you use that infrastructure? What if you realize you don't actually need that much infrastructure? You still want students to come together and live together and work together and study together, right? But at least the system, the Minerva system, allows you really to potentially repurpose that in a much more cost-effective way. Okay. Talked about the system in theory, but what I think a lot of people also, it also begs the question is like, well, what about in reality? So for a number of years now, and what many of you who have heard about Minerva may have heard about is our own flagship undergraduate program, our own university, our own institution, Minerva Schools, right? And it's interesting to note because the system that I talk about, the curriculum, right? The fully active learning pedagogy, certainly using Minerva Forum, the technology you saw. This is the exact system used by Minerva Schools, our university, right? And Minerva Schools has been proving not only how effective and efficient this system is, but it's been actually showing how learning outcomes around the areas that universities believe are most important, right? Particularly those transferable skills, those adaptable skills, learning outcomes around those areas, right, are superior, shown, than those from traditional universities. Very, very interesting, right? So a little more than a year ago, this made the news. So at Minerva, from the very beginning, we wanted to be able to show that our institution, using our system, could allow students to better learn and better be able to apply these transferable skills. Again, all those aspects of critical thinking and effective communication, creative problem solving. We wanted a way to prove that we can do it more effectively, or at least that we can do it effectively. So we chose a particular assessment, which I don't know how well known this assessment is in Thailand. It's used by hundreds of universities, mainly in the US. It's called the CLA Plus, Collegiate Learning Assessment Plus. And it's provided by, it's either an American or maybe a British not-for-profit organization. So this is an assessment, right? But what does this assessment do? This assessment tests students' ability to apply critical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, and communication abilities. Again, what we believe is most important, above all else, regardless of what major you are, is what's most important to learn. And it is what we believe, we believed before we proved it, that the Minerva system can do better. Right? Now it's interesting that, so what we do is, every year, we have our students take this assessment before they even start Minerva, our own university students. Right? Every year we have them take the CLA Plus. And then we also we have them retake the assessment after 1 year of study, after their first year at Minerva. And then we also have them do it when they graduate. Now, it's interesting to note that Minerva school students, right, until recently the only students using the Minerva system, that's changing, but until recently, have, interestingly enough, after just 1 year of Minerva, right, have achieved unprecedentedly high assessment scores, again, with this, using the CLA Plus. And again, this isn't PISA, this is not testing how much history somebody can memorize. Who cares? This is assessing the things that we all say as higher education educators are most important, right? In fact, it's interesting, after that 1 year, even though Minerva students, because for our own university we're quite selective, when students came into our institution, they already tested better than 78% of other graduating university students who take the assessment. We're talking about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of data points from students, right? Mainly in the United States, but also some places around the world. And after just 1 year of the Minerva system, these students tested in the 99th percentile of all graduating students. So they just had 1 year of university, our university system, and yet they were able to apply the elements of critical thinking, of problem solving, and communication abilities more effectively than almost all other university students ever learned. From Harvard, from UCLA, from wherever. Very interesting, right? This is one interesting data point to show the efficacy of the Minerva system. The other one I'll mention is that feedback from those institutions that employ Minerva students, be them in research, be them in academia, be them in government, be it in business or whatever, right, have also told us that students who experience this system, Minerva school students, right, are able to effectively work effectively and think systemically in ways that they just never, they're not used to seeing university students, do this. In fact, over and over again, I hear anecdotally from employers who employ Minerva students, even after 1 year for internships, they say, this is not a college student. Oh, it is a college student. It's a 19-year-old college student from, I don't know, Ghana or something. Students from all over. But when you have the systemic training in the systemic thinking as the system actually does, the impact in the real world is actually quite astounding. Okay, final thing I'll mention, because I'm at time, right? The timer, I'm at time pretty much. Right? So, why is this relevant for maybe some of you here? Right? Because again, Minerva, even though Minerva Schools is a university program, it's not just that. It's a system. It's a system that has been designed to allow other institutions, new and old, to be the change we know that needs to exist in higher education. It's a system that has been designed, to be adaptable, right? A system that's designed to be adoptable, right? A system that's designed to exist and work maybe alongside the system from a traditional university, right, as part of it. Certainly, if there's anyone out there who's considering starting a new university, the system could be used even in its entirety, right? Our mission is the mission of Minerva, 9 words: nurturing critical wisdom for the sake of the world. 9 words. And the only way that we're going to do that, it's not going to be just by running our own university, no matter how big or successful that university would ever get. It's about empowering others, other institutions, to be that change, to use aspects of this system, right, to further improve their own education institutions. That's really why we exist, right? We didn't do that for the first, 5 or 6 years of our existence because we were spending all of our time on our own university program. Last year, I say this because it's public knowledge now, last year in 2018, Minerva decided to select one university out of hundreds who have approached us and wanted to do something. We selected one university, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Interestingly, not an American university, not a European university, Asian university, but a very interesting Asian university. Right? We selected them and allowed them to create a Minerva program within their institution that has been running this year already. Right? That means Hong Kong University of Science and Technology students, right, their own students living in Hong Kong, right, are experiencing Minerva curriculum, pedagogy, fully active learning pedagogy taught by their professors whom we have trained, right? And using Minerva Forum, the classroom experience that you've actually seen, right? And what we're confident we're going to see very soon, once the school year ends there, is the learning outcomes of those students
Hong Kong UST students, just like Minerva School students, are going to be shown to be superior to their peers. Right? So continue to look, to pay attention to this. And that's about it. I look forward maybe to the afternoon. Maybe we can have more of an active dialogue about this. This has been a little bit passive, but thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for Mr. Ken Ross for providing us a very insightful information about Minerva project. Well, change education have to change too. And Minerva system is so revolutionary. It is a powerful combination of advanced curriculum, pedagogy, and technology. I also got impressed that your school supports lifelong career. And I hope that all universities in the world will be changed like Minerva. And I believe that your presentation were exactly what the audience need to hear. And as we know now that the way of application is very important. And then we will apply to Thai society in near future for sure.